Hey everyone, welcome back to Grid Chat. I am super excited because this is an atypical episode. We won't be recapping a race or talking about what it's like to be a driver or anything like that. We will actually be doing a very exciting interview with Alice Menahem, who is the head of distribution and marketing for Red Bull Racing by Pepe Jeans. They are also the title sponsor for Hamda Al-Khabaisi's car in F1 Academy. So I am super excited because this is a totally different perspective than we've had in a while. So please everybody welcome Alice to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to speak with you.
I am really excited. We connected through the magic of the internet because I was at the Miami race this weekend. I was really excited to see how great F1 Academy was this past weekend in Miami. And so I'm really glad we were able to connect in that way. Could you tell us just a little bit about your role at Pepe Jeans?
Sure. I've been with Pepe Jeans for the group that owns Pepe Jeans. We're based in Madrid for about 4 years now. We have several brands. Pepe Jeans is one of them. As you know, and I'm sure we'll touch on that later, we have a history with Red Bull Racing. And since last year, we've been working on an exciting project, which is Red Bull Racing by Pepe Jeans, which is a new brand that we're going to launch together with them in the summer. That's a fashion ready-to-wear collection. And so I look after all of marketing and distribution for this, as you mentioned. This is a collab that we have with the F1 team, so we're also sponsors on the F1 side. And as you mentioned, on a bigger level, title sponsors for the F1 Academy team for the Red Bull Racing Academy program. So that's really exciting. That's a new thing for us this year. And yeah, that's basically what I look after.
Yeah, I am so excited to get into the particulars of that and also how you guys moved from only being a sponsor for Red Bull Racing to taking such a big step with F1 Academy. I am curious for your particular position, just so everyone can get an idea of what your job looks like. What does like a typical day look like for you in your position?
So currently our day-to-day is very much prepping for this launch because it's live in the summer. So we're just a few months away now. It will be quite different once we're live with the product. But right now it's really dealing with all of our commercial partners, all of the wholesale accounts where the collection will be sold, to prepare the plans, to activate the launch there, which windows we're going to be in, what kind of pop-ups we're going to have, all of those kinds of exciting things. Also internally, setting up our e-com properly, shooting the new campaign and having those images and videos ready. And of course, working very closely with the Red Bull Racing team themselves at Oracle Red Bull Racing. So we're in touch officially weekly, but really daily on everything we need to do together, in terms of getting content from the drivers, planning for hosting our guests in Paddock Club, which we do at a lot of the races that we did in Miami, for example, this past weekend, and just working really together on this launch in terms of different elements that they can support with, right? So we can have activations where we'll need to use their show car, for example, or a racing simulator and all of those things. So it's a super, super close relationship that we have with them, as they do with all of their partners. And it's really just constant communication to make sure that we're all aligned, that everybody's aware of everything, and that whatever it is that we do as a sponsor and as a licensed partner makes sense for everybody.
That's really cool. It sounds like a lot of your job is quite creative in terms of figuring out how to utilize like the idea of motorsports and such a top name like Red Bull Racing and associating that with your own activations, your own brand that you're doing in conjunction with each other.
Yeah, it's definitely fun.
Yeah, it sounds like a little bit of a dream, actually.
I'm very lucky. I'm very aware of that.
Yeah, it sounds like in your line of work also you get to attend quite a few races as well.
Yes, just another very lucky part of it. It's different races for different reasons and different things happening there. Obviously, Miami was extra special because of F1 Academy. But depending on the races where we are, again, currently is still a lot of planning, although we're already hosting some guests because we've already been working together. It's not something that happens overnight. So we've been working on this project for months. I started going with them in Austin last year, which was their first, well, for me, the first big annual partner meeting that they have there once a year. It's in Austin because their title sponsor, Oracle, is based in Austin. So it was a great introduction to everyone, to all the teams. And their teams also rotate. If you're not immediately in the race team, not everybody, let's say, from the marketing team attends every race because that would be just impossible on top of the work you need to be outside of that. So it's kind of a game of musical chairs, a little bit of who's going to be where, when, and then you just have a lot of meetings there. Really, the paddock is kind of your office for the weekend. And then for us, it's interesting to see when we're live with the product, how we can activate in the following year at this specific track, what the opportunities look like physically, what Paddock Club looks like physically for the VIP guests, because they're also all a bit different, and just what's going on even in the city over that weekend, because you can also do things off track. So it's always very interesting. To know it in person is very different than to educate yourself about it remotely. So it's been great to be able to travel to quite a few of them with them.
Do you get a chance to actually enjoy the race, or are you pretty much working nonstop?
I try to. It's funny, sometimes I'm really more lost having been there than if I watched it on TV at home with the commentary. You watch some of it, you hear the cars very loud in the background. Sometimes you're lucky you can pop into the garage and the viewing gallery doing it. I usually watch it from inside the Red Bull hospitality in the paddock. So it's fun to watch it with the rest of the team that's there while that's happening. But you're not as focused. There's always something happening, or you run into somebody, or you take the opportunity to sit down and discuss, a plan. So 50-50, I would say. I'm kind of aware of what's happening. But the good thing is that we usually win, right? So you're not at the edge of your seat. You're it's I don't want to jinx it, but it's usually
It's a good problem to have.
It's a very good problem to have. You start from the beginning, or at least I do, from, okay, where's the podium? Where do we need to run later? Because we know more often than not, that's what we're going to need to do. But I try to respect the superstition.
That is very funny. I have like this image now of everyone in the Red Bull garage that is not literally working on the car, like in the hospitality paddock. It just, everyone's sort of being like looking up, checking the gap, looking back down, going back to work.
Yeah, we can continue the meeting.
Oh, very, very funny. I love that. Well, so speaking of Red Bull and your partnership, you guys, as you mentioned, you've been a pretty long-term partner with Red Bull in terms of being a sponsor on the main F1 team. I'm curious for you guys as a brand when it comes to clothing, what it was that excited you about getting into motorsport and Red Bull specifically, because as much as we're joking right now about Red Bull being super dominant, when you guys first started your partnership, they were not the most dominant team. I think we were more in a Mercedes and a Ferrari dominance era.
Yes. To be honest, the original partnership and relationship really predates my time in the company, to the extent where I'm not sure exactly how that started. I am fairly confident, though, and still knowing those people today, that it really started as a true passion project. And our CEO at the time was a genuine fan of Formula One, and, happy to support one of the teams. I'm sure there were personal connections there as well that maybe made the opportunity possible and that made us go with this team rather than another. The values are also quite aligned. We couldn't go, I don't think, even today, regardless of the history, with just any team. Another brand of our group, Hackett London, we used to work together with Aston, for example. So I worked with Aston before. We're also a sponsor of Aston. So we have overall, let's say, a history with Formula One, but Hackett made sense for Aston. Pepe Jeans makes sense for Red Bull. But it was always a passion project. Everybody, all of the senior management in the company are big fans of Formula One. And just, it wasn't just some things make more sense for some companies than others.
Sure.
Some are a bit more, and that's not necessarily worse, but very, very business driven and just a bit cold-headed. I think in our case, we're quite lucky that it works for both, that it's a real thing we want to support. And at the same time, it's a great audience for us and the right thing for us to do.
I really love that, because I think you can see that in some of the ad campaigns that you guys have done together with Red Bull. Like, this was a few years back, but one of my favorite ones that you have was this campaign you did where you invited the Red Bull drivers. At the time, you had Daniel Kiat and Daniel Ricciardo, who is obviously still driving, but you invited them to be a part of this like extreme catwalk where the drivers would model while jumping and skydiving, and then at the end, obviously, it's like revealed that they were doing it through virtual reality. And it's the type of campaign that you can feel both brands understand each other. The fashion is shown as a very cool and aspirational, exciting thing. And it's also tapping into this extreme nature of Red Bull and of Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really effective. So you can really feel that passion, I guess, from Pepe Jeans with the association.
Totally. And I would say Red Bull are a bit more extreme than we are in their approach and all of their sports and all those insane stunts that they pull. It's quite amazing. My first weekend with them in Austin that I just mentioned before, I don't know if you remember, they revealed the car because they had this special US livery. We had this event on the Oracle campus. hundreds of people were there. Christian was interviewing, I think, the drivers on stage. And we hear this helicopter sound, and they brought the car on a helicopter. Well, it was hanging by a thread, and it crossed the entire city and then just dropped it. That's how they revealed it, because that's the Red Bull way. We're not quite as extreme on the Pepe Jeans side. However, we do have that sort of rebel attitude / value that is very important for us. That is very, very close to that. And it's funny actually, because this year is their 20th anniversary. One of their sort of taglines is Forever Rebel. And really, rebel is something that you'll see a lot in our own corporate environment as well. So yeah, definitely there's a lot of synergies there.
Yeah, I actually was in Texas last year for that. So the Red Bull element of this helicopter bringing in it's just there's a level of like showmanship that comes with being associated with Red Bull to a very cool degree.
Absolutely.
So one thing I'm curious about is this year, you mentioned that you're a smaller sponsor for Red Bull. This year, you've taken quite a big step, I think, in becoming the title sponsor for the F1 Academy car that Red Bull is supporting with Hamda Al-Khabaisi. And you guys are not only, very prominently placed with that side pod sponsorship on her car, but you're also the title sponsors of the newly formed driver academy that we've got for F1 Academy with Red Bull and Pepe Jeans, excuse me. And so I'm curious, what about F1 Academy specifically made you want to make that larger investment?
Honestly, it was kind of a no-brainer for us when they came to us with this opportunity. It wouldn't have made sense to be only sponsors of the boy team. Let's say if we're going to be equal, if we're going to call them the girl team, of the F1 boy drivers. And it just made total sense to do it for the women as well. I'm lucky that my industry is rather female dominated, right? Versus a lot of other industries. So we don't start with the same prejudices either. I think my CEO is a woman. All of that also matters, right? And it's important on a business level, but it's also important on a personal values level. And the opportunity was there. I can't go into details, but you can imagine that
Sure.
F1 and F1 Academy, it's not the same rate cards, of course. It's not the same audience. It's not the same completely drastic investment you need to make. So we were happy that at that level, we could be as impactful as possible and take on the title sponsorship.
Yeah, you make a good point. It's a smaller investment than it would be to be doing something at the same level on Formula One. But I will say one thing that I think is a really big deal about this type of investment is it's still a significantly larger investment than we've seen from companies in women in motorsports. And I know when I was at Miami this weekend, and I know you were there as well, you could really feel the difference between last year and this year with the amount of investment that's been made by brands like yourself to support F1 Academy.
Absolutely. I think it's a little bit of a gamble when you start something like this, right? And they have those big plans for F1 Academy, but you don't know what the sort of public reception of it is going to be. But we had trust in the program and trust in Susie Wolf as well, who did a great job bringing in all of the F1 teams. And we also knew from the beginning that Red Bull Racing were very, very serious about it, because not only did they accept immediately to be a part of it, which wasn't the case of everyone, they didn't just take 2 cars as they could have for Red Bull Racing and V-Carb. They took a third one for the general Red Bull brand. So really, they're the team that has the most cars and the most drivers in F1 Academy. We know, obviously, the team looking after that in terms of marketing, etc., from the F1 side are genuinely also passionate about it. So I think we were all sort of excited together and decided to go for it. And I actually went to the first race in Jeddah, which was back in March. Obviously, the in-person attendance was not quite as ginormous as Miami, but that's normal. That's because you're in Saudi Arabia. But already it was a great surprise to see the interest, online, all the conversations, that it was a real part of the conversation, a real part of the weekend conversation, that it wasn't just a footnote. I met Hamda there for the first time as well, which was great, just fantastic. And then, yes, fast forwarding to Miami, which was now the second race of the season for F1A, it was fantastic to see. I'm sure you've seen all the crowds when they've opened up the paddock to the public, which is normally closed to raise awareness. People were really lining up for that. And there were boys waiting in line to get the signatures of the drivers, little boys. I think that's great. There were girls and young women walking around giving the teams. We got some friendship bracelets that I'm still wearing, actually. handing out, their business cards because they want to work in Formula One or they're studying engineering and they're interested in motorsport. I think it's just, yeah, such a great boost for female motorsport in general. And the drivers are doing a great job, I think, giving us a real show. I think those races are really, really interesting and fun. And people are genuinely following. We were in the F1A hospitality during it. It was too hot. I couldn't stay outside. It was just too hot. And all of the girlfriends and the wives of the drivers came as well over to watch it together. It was a real sort of community moment almost. That was very, very nice. So overall, I think it was a great weekend for F1 Academy.
It's great to hear that Jeddah was also so excited, and obviously less attendance just in general. But with Miami, I stopped by the paddock a couple of times and it was hard to get in. Like, it was packed. There were quite a few people that were very excited. All of the drivers took time to meet young women and also young men, like you're saying. And it's interesting with that specifically to see young men excited about young female drivers, because I think sometimes we talk so much about F1 Academy being important only in the sense that it gets young women excited about understanding that they could be a racing driver or any of those things. But I think it also makes a difference for young men to see these young women racing and being supported by sponsors and showing out and taking pictures and signing autographs, because it changes for the entire next generation what they believe to be a racing driver, which changes a lot of those comments and those prejudices that we're growing up with.
Totally.
Yeah. For you as a sponsor, what was it like to know that you had made part of that possible?
I mean, it makes us really proud.
Yeah.
It's just joy, really. It's because it works on several levels, right? You have the excitement of motorsport itself and Formula One and the other formulas in this case, and just in terms of helping on our small level, bringing about equality and all of those important things on a much bigger level, and we can all participate, at our own level in different ways, in different circles and different communities. But the fact that we were able to do it for motorsport is really exciting on our small level again.
Well, and I think that's, I think it's all steps, right? Like, it's a massive difference from last year. I'm sure next year will be even more improvements. And I think seeing these smaller and compared to F1 investments, but large investments overall for something like an F4 series, that we didn't see a series like the W Series receive the same type of support that we're seeing F1 Academy. Does this feel perhaps to you like a little more sustainable than moments we've had before for women in motorsports?
I think so, because I think now you have the full support of the F1 organization themselves, right? So I think that's the big difference here. And the exposure is not the same. The fact that you have this direct link, with the Formula One teams, also that makes it a much more solid sort of plan. So I'm really excited to see how it goes and how the drivers do going forward.
Yeah, this probably seems obvious, but it sounds like from your feelings having been in the paddock this weekend and at Jeddah, that the fan response makes a big difference for sponsors to believe that this is working, like this is worth it, that there's so many
Oh,
people
absolutely.
coming out. Yeah.
Absolutely, because if you do all of this and nobody really cares, and it's not mentioned, it's not even just the brand exposure that of course would be worse, but it just means just the program overall and the idea overall is not getting picked up, and which would be even sadder. So it's really great to see people getting behind it, and I can only imagine next year, and that they've confirmed the Netflix show, that's also going to be another huge boost. So we're all very happy about that, because right now people follow it and they're excited about it if they follow F1. I feel that's my feeling. It hasn't quite reached a broader audience yet, which is normal. So it's a whole new thing, but I'm sure that we'll see a major difference once the show is live as well. Also, because just the season, even just those 4 first races technically, because there's 2 per weekend.
Oh, sure.
We've seen a lot of drama, right, in terms of storytelling, and you have a lot of characters emerging already from that. So I'm sure the show will be great as well.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see it, specifically because I think Drive to Survive brought quite a large, and I wouldn't say it was only Drive to Survive, but Drive to Survive did bring quite a large female audience to F1 as a whole since it started.
Yeah.
And so I think we'll see something similar. And I'm really excited about it because I actually met women at this past F1 race that were there only to watch F1 Academy.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, there were one young woman I met, I asked, like, what's your favorite team? What driver are you here to support? And she thought I was talking only about F1 Academy because she wasn't even watching the F1 races. She was, saying, she was like, "Oh, I just want all of the girls to win. I want all of the girls to do well." So
Oh, that's
I
great.
think, yeah, it's really cool to see it like spreading. And I think you're right. I think the show will do the same. It'll make it even bigger.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and then something I'm curious for you about is and this may seem sort of obvious, but maybe not so obvious to the people who listen to this podcast. What is the difference in being a title sponsor for F1 Academy and being a smaller sponsor for Red Bull? Are you seeing more access, more responsibility, or how do those things shake out?
It's very hard to compare because we want to activate those things in very different ways. Most of the time, you'll see, in very general terms, you'll see maybe, and this is not necessarily just between F1A and F1, but just in terms of the different levels of sponsorships that brands have with the team. It's not so much the access, but it's the amount of hospitality, for example, that you can do. Hospitality is a huge driver for a lot of the sponsors. So, for example, you'll get X amount of invitations for the year for your whoever you want to invite, really. That's the most, let's say, mathematical bit of it. And then, of course, the size of your brand exposure, your logos on the car, on the team kits and things like that. For F1, in our case, it's a bit different because in addition to being the small sponsor, we're also the license partner now for the fashion collection. So then it's also a bigger partnership in that sense. And that's what takes most of our time, actually, is more of that side of the business. And then F1 Academy, again, versus the 24 races that we have this year in F1, there's only 7 in F1 Academy. So you also need to approach it differently and you get to do different things as a sponsor for that.
That's very cool. Well, one of the main things that I'm excited about that you've mentioned a couple of times, and I'd love to get into as many details as we can talk about without crossing the line in terms of the fact that it's not fully out yet. But you guys are doing this big line, this Red Bull Racing by Pepe Jeans line that's coming out this summer. Is there anything you can tell us about that line so far? I know it'll be ready to wear, which is exciting. I think that can be a big difference with paddock fashion a bit, where we're seeing this is going to be more of a brand that actual fans could wear very simply versus, something that's a little bit more off the runway or tailor made. But yeah, I'd love to know what we're allowed to know so far.
So the idea is that we're trying to do something that's a little bit more lifestyle. And the current offering really is, fan merch. You can get your team replica jersey. And so we want to do something that it's quite, I would say, with leisure driven. It's relaxed. It's nothing, fancy, but it's premium. It's great quality. It's Red Bull were very kind in letting us experiment with the graphics a little bit and go outside the traditional Red Bull logo. So there's some fun graphic treatment in there. The idea is that, yeah, it's something that you can wear every day, right? It's not something that you're just going to wear to a race. You can really sort of live your passion in your everyday in a way that's a bit more subtle, maybe, than just having to wear the full-on, cap and top. It's going to be men and women and some unisex styles. We'll have a lot more women in the following collection for Spring 25, which is great. We're already working on that now because fashion works with crazy timelines. But yeah, we're planning for it to be out towards the end of August. We will probably go live a little bit sooner with one retailer that I can't quite confirm yet, but there will be a fun sort of exclusive launch. That's a big part of the current plans. And then, yeah, we're just excited to see how people respond to it. And we're excited to see people wear it.
I love just in a little bit that what you've talked about is this idea that it's a little more subtle and able to be worn outside of the track, because I think that is one of the biggest complaints I hear from fans of any gender expression. I think like one of the biggest issues is you're spending your money on something that you just sort of look like you're a member of the team and you're not going to wear that, out in public to dinner or to a bar. And I love the idea
Exactly.
that it sounds like you're sort of solving that.
Yes, well, we're trying. That's the plan.
I have faith. I'm excited.
Yeah. No, we're very
Um,
excited.
and with the association with F1 Academy, will Hamda and the whole team be a part of it? It sounded like from the press release that it is that you guys have, provided travel kit for both F1 and F1 Academy. And we've already seen Hamda with your logos and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that'll be a big part of it as well.
Well, I am really excited about this partnership and getting to see kind of this new take on I think on what paddock fashion can look like for fans. It sounds like we've seen, Max in Pepe Jeans arriving, and we've seen Checo the same, and obviously also Hamda's wearing the same kit, and it's cool to see them being treated, in a very similar way where they're all three the face of the brand as opposed
Hmm.
to a direct separation.
Yeah, yeah, we're trying
Yeah.
to keep it all
All
360.
together. Well, I really appreciate you giving me and my listeners just a little bit of a kind of peek behind the curtain as to how some of these things are being made possible, because I know in terms of the people who listen to me and watch my content, everyone is really excited about F1 Academy, and we've been
Hmm.
feeling this really big shift this year of like how much more serious it feels like it's being taken. And I really appreciate you giving us sort of like an inside line to part of how that's being made possible.
Of course, my pleasure.
Well, for everyone listening, Alice has been, a wonderful guest, and I really appreciate her taking the time to talk to us. And also, please be sure to keep an eye out for this ready to wear line from Pepe Jeans that will be coming out in August, maybe earlier. And and I know I'll be keeping my eye out for it. So thank you so much, Alice, for taking the time.
Thank you.
Always, if you don't want to watch these races alone, you can join the actual grid chat. I host a group chat of motorsports fans where fan behavior is encouraged, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. We watch these races live together, chat about breaking news, and of course, send each other an unhealthy amount of memes. If you'd like to join the grid chat, you can do so at tandemproductions.com/grid chat. There will also be a link to that in the episode description. Once you fill out the form on the webpage there, you'll get an invite via email from me. If you want to connect, let me know what you thought about the episode, or even just ask me another question that you'd like me to cover on the show. You can find me on all social media platforms at Marissa Kamari. And one of the best ways to connect with me is if you're listening to this podcast on Herd FM. You can find me in the community section on Herd FM, where my username is just my first name, Marissa. And once we follow each other, after every episode that you listen to, I'll be able to comment and have a conversation with you directly. So again, my username on Herd FM is Marissa. As always, I've been your host, Marissa Tandon, and thank you for joining the Grid Chat.